The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a WordStream webinar. This week's webinar is all about e-commerce. My name's Amanda, and I'm here to start things off before we passing things off to our Google Shopping expert. To start off with a little bit about WordStream, you may know us from our awesome content on our blog or our white papers. But you may also know us from our free tools that analyze your performance on Google or Facebook ads. But what you might not know is that WordStream also offers a software service. And WordStream Advisor was created to help businesses and agencies manage their online advertising. One second, one moment. There it goes. Sorry, we just had a delay in the slides. So this is a little bit about WordStream. Like I said, we're a premier partner of Google. We have a lot of great free tools, and we also have a software and we recently released a brand new shopping product, which we'll touch on a little bit later in today's presentation. And that product was created to help you manage Google shopping campaigns, product feed management, and conversion rate optimization. So before we get into the content, I did just want to say, stay connected with us. Follow us on social. We're really trying to build out our online community, and we want people to stay connected and communicating with each other. So follow us. And just some last minute logistics before everyone starts asking, because I know this is a hot topic. We are recording, and we will be able to send you guys the deck and slides and the recording within 48 hours of the webinar. And again, just throughout today's presentation, please feel free to submit your questions. We love to hear from you. We want this to be interactive and beneficial to you guys on the line with us today. So please reach out. Without further ado, I will pass things off to today's presenter, our Google Shopping expert, Matt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt, and you guys are joining us today to go over some amazing content as we are talking shopping. In today's workshop, we're really going to go over sort of the basics, the core, the fundamentals to running a Google Shopping campaign and actually increasing your revenue there. So before we begin, just a little bit about myself. So my name is Matthew Davidson. I am WordStream. And so I work with our e-commerce clients to actually grow and expand their businesses. And I have about 4 years experience here in the digital marketing space. I'm an e-com expert, and I'm also a big charcuterie enthusiast. So if anybody's in the Boston area, let me know and we'll get some boards. All right, so before we begin, I just want to get to know a little bit about you guys here. So please participate in our poll here. And the question we want to know is, how long have you been selling products online?
All right, we have tons of answers rolling in, so I'll give it a few minutes just so everyone can get their vote out there. All righty, a majority of the audience has answered us, so let's close the poll and share the results. All right, it looks like a majority of our audience at 33% has been selling products for 1 to 2 years. There's some newbies on there who haven't ever before, and a close second was 3 to 5 years. So we've got a mix. There's even some tenured people on here, 10 plus years of experience.
Wow, yeah, so definitely quite the range. I think there's content that's going to appeal to pretty much our larger audience here. But before we get into that, I mean, some of you are new to e-commerce, some of you have been in the space. So let's talk about the current landscape. This past year, consumers spent $500 billion with online options, which is up 15%. So that is expected to continue. And it's not only growing steadily, but pretty quickly from what we've been seeing. For that here, shopping ads actually account for roughly 75% of clicks from non-branded product searches, which is huge given the fact that if you've got a new product, a brand people aren't familiar with, 5% of those clicks could be going to you. We can't talk about Google Shopping without talking about Amazon. We know that Amazon alone accounts for about 40% of the US retail market. But that being said, Google is not far behind. And for Google here, actually in Q4 of 2018, their shopping spend was up 43%. Some bounds on their part, and I only expect that to continue. Just some key with Google as well. Currently, 39% of all Google are actually on. In this webinar here, we're hoping to teach you some tips that will help you here. Cover basics in the beginning here. So what are shopping ads? How do shopping ads work? We'll get into some more important best practices on product data. And then we'll go over some more basic shopping campaign best practices, but a lot of that's going to be rooted in industry best practices and benchmarks as well. And then finally, we'll just go over a few key takeaways before going into some Q&A. And I'll try to answer questions as we go along, but if we don't get to them, we will have plenty of time at the end to cover those. So with that, let's into our content here and start with what are Google Shopping ads. So image heavy here. They show up on the desktop on like the right side of the search results page, sometimes at the top. On mobile, see them exclusively take up a huge portion of your screen. So, I mean, the big highlight to these ads is the image portion of it. And also, if you click into these ads here, there's all Google Shopping products, different reasons, and it's a whole different experience than what you see on this initial search results. So I guess just to kind of go off of what I was talking about, the visual nature of these ads, these are the components of how they show to an end user. So we'll notice here the product image, we'll see product title, you'll notice price, website, and then you'll also see some promotions at the bottom. You'll see anything from seller ratings, free shipping, you'll also get promos, discounts, price drops. All of that can help with your click-through rate and improve your performance. So that's for the basics of what the ads look like. So how do they really work? Because there is a fundamental difference to how these ads work compared to how standard search ads work. And the main difference here, shopping campaigns have no keywords, which is a big difference from what most people are used to on the search network. So you might be wondering then, how actually is Google going to be serving your ads? So quite simply, Google is going to be matching your ads, not with keywords, but actually with product data. The image you see to your right here is a single example of what product data might look like. And it can pull from a bunch of different places. It can pull from your website in the form of a text file. It can be a CSV document, a Google Sheet. But the main underlying component here is that we've got these product data columns that have to be compliant with Google, and Google uses all this information in these columns to actually match your ads to search results. So a little bit different than how you might think about traditional search campaigns. And so here's kind of Google product data attributes. And so these attributes here are anything from a brand, the product name itself. We've got things like the APN, which is a product number. That's once again. And so I mentioned that it's going to be housed in sort of a spreadsheet type format, but a lot of this product data is actually just coming from your website. If you look at this example here, you've got kind of just a typical e-commerce. You have just a typical e-commerce landing page. You've got your product image. You've got the title of 31-inch skateboard series beer tracks or beer trick. Sorry, but then you've got bottom color. Bearings. You got the size of the deck. We've got somewhat of a category to the top where it says home skateboards, 31-inch skateboard. So all of these components are aspects of product data that are housed in your website. And here, just to kind of summarize how this all sort of fits together and how you're able to run ads. So basically, you've got your website. From your website here, you can pull out information, product data into some sort of a feed or some sort of a text file, Excel doc, and then that data goes to Google Merchant Center. And Google Merchant Center, think of it as like your compliance engine, and it's going to check to see that your product data is compliant with what Google wants. You've got your product attributes in a format that they accept and want. And then once that's accepted, it's going to go to Google Ads, and you are good to run your shopping campaigns, which we'll cover how to optimize here shortly. So, seems simple enough, but how important is it really? Yeah, so caught on my slide here. Oh, sorry about that, folks. So how important is this product data? So it's actually really important for optimizing your feed. Feed optimization can be a really powerful tool for improving your shopping performance. So next, we'll cover some product data best practices. And so the most important aspect of your product data is going to be actually the product title. It's really one of the most important fields when optimizing your Google campaigns, not only because Google uses your product titles to match to relevant search terms, but it's also because it's what the end consumer is going to see. And so a few best practices are listed on the left there. You can actually fit a total of 150 characters in those product titles. But as this is something that somebody's going to see on those little truncated ads on the search results page, really only about 70 characters will show. So typically we recommend a max of around 9 characters or so. But again, you do have a total of 150 that you could put in there. Really important to actually format it appropriately with the product title. You want to be detailed, most important information first. And then in the example next to you here, it's a very common structure where you've got brand, you've got sort of what the product is, you've got different product attributes that are relevant. But again, avoid keyword stuffing. And then there's actually kind of a formula here that can be pretty useful to follow. And you copy of the slides, so you don't need to screenshot this or read through as quickly as you can. But just note, these are some recommended formulas here for setting up your product titles based on the type of industry that you're in or the type of product that you have. So we've got hard goods, we've got electronics, and you can see here for electronics, they recommend putting in a model number, whereas for consumables, you've got attributes relating to quantity. So just keep that in mind as you're building out those product titles. So we do have another similar product attribute that's pretty important to cover too, and that's product description. So this shows up only when you get into sort of that Google Shopping network and people open up your ad. But really for this, it's a place where you can put in keywords to help Google match your product to search terms. So you don't necessarily want to keyword stuff, but it is important here to include additional attributes, and it's okay to repeat bits and pieces from that product title. Again, this is really important for you to help match and tell Google here what search terms that you should be relevant to. So this is another category that, or I guess this is another product attribute that Google has made mandatory, and it's a Google product category. And so an example here you'll see to the right, where it's like apparel and accessories, clothing, dresses. So this is a pretty standard approach here, and it's pretty simple. The main best practice here is pick the most specific category for each product. So this seems simple enough, but currently we've got 5,427 different product categories to select from. So finding the most relevant one to your potentially thousands of products can be very time-consuming and difficult. And so you'll see to the left here, this is just an example, a small snapshot of Google's product taxonomy. And again, your best practice is find the best one. Fortunately, WordStream actually has a tool that's going to help with that. Through our data feed product, we actually have an auto-suggest feature. So simply upload your data feed. And then if you don't have your product categories filled out here, we will basically auto-suggest them based on the attributes that are provided in the feed. So that can be a huge time saver, again, if you're dealing with products and you want to help optimize it to how Google is going to then serve your ads. So very similar to Google categories here is actually called product type. And so what product type is, it's very similar. You can see it sort of in the example, that caret structure. But basically this is going to help with product relevancy, and it's also going to help you with campaign management. You can set these yourself, and it's recommended to take your product category from Google and then just build on it. Try to expand it, make it more specific, but then it allows you to subdivide by those attributes while also giving Google an opportunity to know more about your product. So again, another important column that oftentimes gets overlooked in your data feed. And something else that gets oftentimes overlooked is just adding in additional attributes, right? You've got things like color, gender, size, flavor. Something's a multi-pack. If you have it on your website and you're not using it in your Google feed, you should be. It's really important and impactful, and it's going to be best practice to have all this information in your feed when it makes sense. So again, just you want to make sure your product data is in line, and this is going to help Google show your products and get them favored. And so there's really one other feature here aside from product title that's almost equally important in your product data, and that's going to be your product images. So for your product images here, you want them to stand out. You want them to be high quality, and you want to differentiate them from your competitors here. So this is a good place for testing out different types. You can see in the example on the right, we've got 2 different images here. And actually, I mean, not only can you A/B test which image is going to work best, but you can also use an additional image link that will actually show up when people expand your ad in the Google Shopping Network. So I think we actually have a question here. So just bear with me for one moment.
Yeah, just to backtrack to product descriptions for a second. Someone asked, they're exporting their products over to Asia, and they're wondering if Google Shopping ads allow you to use different languages within your descriptions.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And so as far as different feeds go, if you are advertising in another country, you're actually going to have a separate feed. So each country requires its own separate feed and has its own set of rules. So in trying to keep compliant with that, it probably would be in its own language anyway. But thanks for your question. All right, and I guess just to summarize here in the product images, this is a good place to test. And again, make sure your images are clean, they don't have watermarks, no logos, no text. So it seems pretty simple, just optimizing your feed, following that checklist I provided. But a lot of times people actually still have difficulty with their product data. And it's not necessarily that they don't know what best practices are, it's that they've got a huge number of products and maybe they're on their website, it's not pulling over cleanly. So WordStream databases here, or WordStream data feeds is really meant to solve that problem. So basically, a lot of times, like I said, it happens if you got a Shopify website, let's say, and you're uploading data, maybe you're missing things like color. Maybe you're missing certain MPN product numbers. And so maybe there's a description where actually your product title should be. So what our solution does here, you basically upload your data feed to our product. We basically will get it mapped, set up correctly, and make it compliant with Google. So then we'll upload that clean feed that's actually been optimized, set up for best practices, and then we'll start to connect it to Merchant Center to let you run a campaign with the best product data possible. And also with our data feed offering, we do have a full managed service there that will actually work with you on your data feeds on an ongoing basis. So really nice in helping you keep things compliant and helping you improve your product data itself. All right, so we've covered product data and presumably you've gone through these best practices. Now it's time to talk about, with all this clean data, now what's the best way to actually create a strategy that's going to make your campaigns profitable. And so really this is kind of what I envision to be sort of the core of any high return on ad spend shopping campaign. And so the main things here are campaign structure, bidding, and search term optimization. So we'll get started with structure. This is hugely important and there's actually a lot to this. So for today's webinar, we're not going to go too in depth. We do have the Q&A at the end, but we'll cover sort of some basic best practices and what to look for. And so I guess let's start with the burning question. So what is the best campaign structure? There isn't one. So that's probably not what you guys wanted to hear, but it's true. There isn't really a best campaign structure. Really, a lot of this is going to be based on performance. It's based on the products themselves. We'll cover sort of a couple of the ins and outs to identify what might work for you. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay. All right, there we go. We wouldn't want the picture of the adorable dog, right? So why is structure so important? And in reality here, it's actually going to be in large part due to bidding. So bidding is going to be done at the product group level. And so depending on how your campaign is structured will determine how you're able to bid for your products. And so another important thing you want to think about too is ease of use. So as you are building out a campaign structure, you can even bid on single products, but if you have thousands and thousands of products and a huge inventory, it's going to be a nightmare to manage bids across all of those individual product groups. So you're going to want to have a few considerations in how you're going to structure it, and what's going to work best for you. So where are you to begin? And I would say really the best place to begin is going to actually be with your products themselves. So I kind of alluded to it before, but a couple of questions to ask. So are you a brand-focused advertiser? Really important here is, are your products similar in price point, or do you have a huge array of price points and products and profit margins on top of that? So do you have a small or large product inventory? Are you very seasonal? Are you continually adding up or adding new products to your inventory that need to get prioritized? Also, how do your products perform across devices? Are you better on mobile? Are your products exclusively selling on desktop? And then what we'll talk about in just a second too is, do you have any bestsellers? Again, these are a few different ways you can structure your campaigns, but these are really the core questions to ask. And so what you're always going to want to remember before we get into those structures here is also actually what we call the 80-20 rule. And so basically that rule tells us that 20% of your products will generally drive about 80% of your revenue. I see this to be the case, I would say 9 times out of 10. And so a lot of the work that I do with my clients is identifying those, that 20% of products, building a structure around them, and then really finding ways to grow and scale those products. It's not to say you can't, get success for that lower 80, but you're always going to want to build a structure that will help that top 20%. And so next we're just going to cover a few ways that you can break out your campaigns and maybe why you might do it for certain advertisers. So for brand focused, right? A lot of people will be resellers of certain brands, and those brands carry a heavy weight here. So in the case we're seeing right now, we're seeing a perfume cologne website, right? When people are buying perfume and cologne, they're looking for brand names, right? They've got their Abercrombie and Fitch brand that they know and love. And so as you see certain brands perform better, you can adjust bids if you set up your structure like this. So again, there are certain advertisers that are going to benefit from this, but it all goes back to updating your bids. Your product feed as far as how you can set but it's going to be based on product type. Just a second, folks, here while the slides catch up. But the reason why product type actually is going to be are going to have similar price points, and they're going to have similar performance. So give me just 1 second, an example should pop up here. But yeah, a very common example would be what we're seeing here for basically it's furniture, right? So we've got here different things for like living room furniture, bedroom furniture. But typically speaking, your ottomans and benches, your coffee tables, your nightstands, all of that's going to have a similar price point and allow you to bid appropriately on those products. Because it also mirrors your website, if there's certain things that are going on sale, if there's certain products that come into season, you then get the ability to bid on them and adjust them accordingly. So again, another very popular way to structure your campaign. Probably the easiest way to approach your campaign structure is actually going to be by actually doing what we call a bestseller campaign. And so I use this one a lot. It kind of goes back to that 80-20 rule, but if you've got a core group of bestsellers, you can build out a campaign that has a full budget that really focuses on those bestsellers. So really simple, like I said, in this particular scenario to the right, we've got a bestsellers and then just our low volume. So this structure is really just that 80-20 rule in a nutshell. Next campaign structure that I would highly recommend considering here is actually going to be based on price point. And so if you notice to the left, particular products here, they actually range in price. You've got some that are $10, you've got some that are $1,000. And then you've got some that are right in the middle here at $185 to $550. And I can tell you these products, they're not very seasonal. And so because they range so vastly, we actually tried to set up a price point focused campaign structure. And that's kind of what you see to the right there. We've got things that are greater than $100, things that are less than $100. We've got other price points in the 100 to 500 range, and then things 500 and up. So with this structure, this actually allows you to update your bids based on margin, based on price point. It can have a huge impact depending on the types of products and how you manage your bids. In particular campaign structure for this particular client, we actually saw some huge results here. My slide catches up here, you'll see in just a second, but very, very positive results here. Since implementing this structure, conversions were up 36%. Our conversion rate's gone up 23%. And the most shocking numbers here are actually the value here. So the conversion value is up 90%, while the overall return actually is up 157% on our ad spend. So that's pretty big over a 2-month period. And that's solely by readjusting our bids based on the variance in their price points. And so after looking at all of that in terms of structure, once you get the right structure picked out for yourself and you decide, okay, this is the one for me, you might be asking, what is the best monthly budget to start with? And it can vary, but in reality here, the average monthly budget for Google Ads is $770. And so if you guys are wondering here, you'll actually be able to download these sort of industry benchmarks here. So feel free to do that. But as we can see here in this little quote here from our blog, basically, given that the average cost per click on Google Shopping is 66 cents, you can still expect to get some good traffic for as low as $10 a day. So that's pretty encouraging, right? Far cheaper than for some industries on search. Okay, so again, we talked about structure, and we kind of talked about structure based on the importance of managing your bids. So let's go over some best practices for managing those bids. And so I would say probably the more important thing to consider when managing bids is actually that shopping campaigns are managed using conversion value. This might be obvious for some, but I come across a lot of individuals who actually don't set up revenue tracking, which is a huge detractor here because conversion value is going to show you what your actual return is for the money you're putting in. So in the example to the right here, at the sort of the top line there, you'll see 4.33 conversion value for spend. Probably the easiest way to explain what that number is for every dollar you put in, that's how much you're getting back. So they're getting back $4.33 for every dollar they put in. So depending on what your overall gross margins are, depending on the types of products you sell, depending on if you're a manufacturer or reseller, that'll determine sort of where that number needs to fall. But generally what I see most advertisers range between 2.5 and 6. There's plenty of advertisers that can get more than that, depending on sort of the business and the industry. So we kind of alluded to this earlier where not all bids are equal. So here we've got identical products. However, on the left side, you've got an 882-pound pallet of hexagonal jars. On the right, we've got a single 9-pound hexagonal jar. And so you're obviously not going to want to bid on these products in the same way. So that's always something to keep in mind as you are setting your bids. So again, in sort of getting back of what should we set our bids to, we do have some numbers on the average CPC by industry. And so what the average CPC is for shopping in general is 66 cents, which is great. You know, it's much lower barrier point to entry than maybe other Google experiences. And actually the most expensive click as far as industries goes is office and business needs that is around $1.09. And I also want to point out this is not the case across the board, but there are plenty of industries where this is a good benchmark to start. And so really, as we come here, this is typically how I'm going to be managing bids on like a weekly basis. And so sort of why I mentioned that conversion value and setting a return on ad spend goal is that that's the benchmark for specific products that I use to manage bids. And so in the example at the top here, we see a product that actually, or I should say a product group that actually is converting over the last 14 days. It's got actually a 6.33 conversion value over cost, meaning a 6 times return. Our goal is only 4 times. So for this particular scenario, I'm going to want to increase its impression share, get more visibility, and so I'll just simply increase bids 10 to 20%. You could even go more, but this is typically a good place to start. The other thing I'm doing here on a week-to-week or even bi-weekly basis is I'm going to be going into things that are underperforming. So the example at the bottom, very similar scenario here, except for this one, it's converting but at a lower or poor return on investment. So for this one, it's at a 112 conversion value for spend. So I'm going to lower my bids 10 to 20%. So pretty straightforward, easy rule of thumb as you're trying to consider how do I adjust bids. There's also other ways to adjust bids too. So it's very common to actually see performance vary across device. And what we're looking at here is actually very typical. So what we're seeing here for mobile is huge volume in traffic. We're seeing clicks, impressions, driving the most conversions. But in reality here, it's actually the desktop computers that have the best ROI. So with that, you might want to adjust bids here and try to improve maybe your reach on computers and try to limit the negative impact that maybe the mobile could be having on your bottom line. But again, always consider that mobile does seem to be the big driver here, and people could return on desktop to purchase. Conveniently here, WordStream actually has its own. So if you give it just 1 second here, we'll see that device bid adjustment alert here. But I will sort of echo that the what we were seeing on the screen here is actually very typical. And so when I mentioned here that people can go back and actually purchase on desktop, it's actually pretty common. There's actually a column that you can pull up. You have to implement it through analytics, and it's called cross-device. And so that is data that you can find that is accessible to try to show you if people are finding you on mobile and ultimately coming back and purchasing on desktop. Okay, so here again is that device bid adjustment alert. And so you'll see here these come up weekly, and so it's going to adjust here for performance. And so again, it takes a lot of the guessing out of it, and it's based on actual return numbers. So something else you can do here is you can do bid adjustments based upon different audiences. So the list that we have in front of us here is very typical of what I'll recommend for most e-commerce clients. And so we've got at the bottom here, I've got an all visitors list. All users is actually the same list, basically. But then these audiences at the top here are maybe a bit more valuable. People that have been in their cart, people that actually have been to the site but didn't purchase already. Those audiences we might want to bid up on a bit higher, right? We know that they were interested in your brand, they abandoned their cart. So if they're searching for the same product, you want to make sure you're getting visibility. So doing bid adjustments at that level could greatly improve your chances of then turning that person that was an abandoner into a converter. So once you go through, you adjust your bids accordingly. I want to have a good understanding of where should through rate fall. And so really, if you do your bid adjustments wisely here, you should exceed this. But on average here, the click-through rate for shopping ads is only 0.86%, with the highest averaging around 1.2%. So obviously it can be challenging to get those clicks, but as we learned earlier, 39% of all clicks on Google go to shopping ads. So something else we can do actually to help improve that click-through rate is going to actually be managing intent-based search terms. So what does that really mean? I'll pull up an example here in a moment. That example here will help illustrate it. But managing search terms without actually having keywords is going to be very important and part of your daily routine, I would say, for managing these campaigns. And simple here, or sorry, I think I went back a slide here. So the example we're seeing in the left here, this is for a commercial product. It's an adjustable four-way clothing rack. And so this is clearly something that you wouldn't really have in your home. It's something that somebody would buy if they were a department store, or if they owned a boutique. So we're looking at it right here is a list of search terms around this product. And so let's start with that first search term there. All right, so that first search term is listed as four-way rack. That's pretty much exactly what this client's selling here, right? High intent term. It's a specific item that someone's looking for, and they're highlighting the exact model type. And so let's look at the next one down. Clothing rack for store. So I would say this one's probably more medium intent, right? They're looking for a clothing rack. They're clearly a store. But it's not really looking for necessarily a four-way rack. They could be looking for a mobile rack, something rolling, who knows, but still medium intent. The next one down, what we'll see is shirt rack. Now, to me, that could be pretty much anybody, right? It could be somebody looking to buy something on Wayfair. It could be somebody looking for something for their closet. Not really great search intent there. Then as we go further down, we've got sort of a money search term there, right? Really high intent. It's commercial four-way clothing racks. That's exactly what this product is and what the client's looking to actually sell. So really high intent there. And then the bottom one, clothing fixtures, I mean, that could relate to just about anything. So again, managing this is going to be important to how you structure your campaigns and what you're going to see as far as performance. And so I kind of referenced here account structures that we can use to actually accommodate these search terms. And so I'll pull up an example here in a moment. And in this example, what you'll see to the left is actually the item. So this is a compass necklace by John Medeiros Jewelry. And so this necklace here, we broke out a campaign around basically brand products and generic products. And so in order to direct our search intent, sorry, just a second, folks. Oh, sorry, okay, we're back. Sorry about that. But basically, in order to set up the structure, what we did was added negatives to the generic thing. We did different things too, like we added in things for their different collections. Why we did this to redirect traffic away from those generic search terms, and then we wanted to focus our traffic on the brand campaign. So we still want to capture some of that generic traffic. The only exception here with the generic traffic is that we don't want to bid on it as highly. So generic campaign with low bids, and a branded campaign with high bids to capture high intent terms. So take a look at what this might look like. So what you'll see here for the generic campaign, by adding in all of those brand terms and collection terms, we get things like woman's gold compass jewelry, compass necklace, gold compass necklace. So these are all like pretty relevant, but they're not really as high intent. I put these probably in the medium intent category. So we don't necessarily want to overbid on them, but we'd rather All right, so yeah, sorry, the slides are kind of skipping around here, but you can see for that campaign there, these were the search terms that we're picking up. We're getting the brand name, John Madero's compass pendant, and we're also getting John Madero's nautical jewelry. So higher on those, capture the high intent. Another important way to be using negatives is to actually be during a weekly schedule here. It's very important to be checking on your negatives weekly, making sure that there's you're not adjusting just for not just adjusting for intent, but also just getting anything that you don't want to be showing up for. So again, that's a weekly task. And fortunately here with WordStream, we've actually got an add negative alert that will actually get triggered on a weekly basis. It'll pull up negatives for very time consuming to actually go through and do this week to week. So again, we'll do all that for. But then I guess as far as what tasks you should be doing, I have kind of gives you an idea of me doing on a week to week basis and beyond. And so I guess to start, we've got our first one here, which is adding negatives. That should be as far as adjusting bids, we're going to want to be adjusting bids on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. And then as far as measuring product performance, this can be anywhere from analyzing click-through rate, looking at impression share, checking out your conversion value and conversion rates. I don't want to say it's a deep dive, but it'll give you a good indication of how the products are actually performing. And I would say give it probably 60 days at the most. And then in terms of analyzing long-term performance, I would say 6 months of data is probably enough. You're going to want to keep in mind things like seasonality in analyzing the performance, but I only look at data in these 6 month chunks in deciding if the product is at the moment. So use this as sort of a general guide here. And so basically, if you followed the best practices today, you updated your data feeds, you worked through your campaign structure, you've been adjusting bids, you've been following that checklist I just outlined, these would be the conversion rates that are average. I can tell you that with what we talked about today, you'd probably exceed it. So on average here, the conversion rate's around 1.91%. But again, there's other things you can do too, like updating product data, adding things in your merchant promotions, and just really keeping on top of your campaigns. So with that, we get to a couple of key takeaways. And so just determine how and when your ads should show. And having product data that is consistently optimized and tested will ensure high functioning performance for your Google Shopping campaigns. And so next most important thing is going to be campaign structure. So campaign structure will determine the ways you can optimize your campaigns, anything from bidding, search term optimization. It can also help you in managing thousands of products easily and more efficient. Even single products based on performance. So you'd be adjusting bids based on things like positive or negative return, things like margin, competitiveness, or impression share. And you also have the opportunity to adjust bids based on audiences or devices, which can be very impactful depending on how you perform. Final takeaway is going to be about search term optimization. So without use of keyword match types here, a native search term management is really the core component of helping to manage a high-performing shopping campaign. So obvious unrelated negative, consider things like high or low intent, brand-focused, top-of-funnel oriented types of searches, really in determining how to set up your negatives. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Looks like we do have enough time for some Q&A, so stay tuned and I'll try to get to some of your questions. But again, if you don't have any questions, thank you for attending. We hope to see you soon.
All right, yeah, we'll open up the board to some questions, but before I dive into those, I just wanted to launch another offer for everyone still on the line today. That was tons of information, and it was really meant as just like a soup to nuts introduction to e-commerce with some deep dives into best practices. So if you're feeling like you want some more industry specific or business specific information, please take us up on this offer that you have on the screen right now. You can talk to a Google Shopping expert here like Matt at WordStream, and they'll really be able to dive into your account and give you specific strategies and optimizations just for you. But while you guys are selecting yes or no to that, let's get into some of those questions. So one question that I thought would be interesting for the audience to hear is if you have any tips on improving impression share.
Yeah, that's actually a wonderful question. And so you can view impression share at a few different levels for shopping campaigns. So you can actually do it all the way to the product group level, which in some cases is like a single product. And so when you're looking at that, I mean, probably one of the more important things you can do is, or probably the quickest things you can do is simply to raise bids for specific products. But you only want to do it for products that are performing well. That's probably the easiest approach, but actually it kind of can go a bit deeper. And so improving your product data is another key way that you can improve your impression share. And I've seen adding like additional columns and attributes actually make a huge impact very quickly in that regard for impression share as well. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And we've also got a multitude of people asking about the advantages and disadvantages to smart shopping campaigns and your thoughts on that.
Yes, yes, that's a wonderful question as well. And it's one that's definitely been coming up more and more. So I guess I'll sort of an overview here on my thoughts on it, because I've actually seen it be successful in many cases, and I've also seen it in other cases sort of teeter. So I would say advantages of it is that it's going to be something that if it's set up correctly and it works for your products, you virtually have to really manage nothing except for budgets and maybe your product inventory. It's a fully automated campaign structure. It works off conversion value, but it also doesn't necessarily let you decide which products that you want to show up more highly. Right, if you're seasonal and you get new products, Smart Shopping can go with what it actually prefers and thinks is the higher converting, higher value product. So, I mean, other things that may not be great about it is you don't get to check out your negative search terms. And then if you have an off week, you can't really do too much to change it. So those are just sort of overarching things to look out for. But as I said, I have seen it be highly successful, and I have some clients that actually run with it exclusively because it works for their products.
Awesome. And we'll wrap it up with one more question that a set of people asked. They're curious about some best practices or suggestions for brands that have thousands of different products in terms of segmenting that. And if you have any suggestions, this one person said, for say a headband company that has thousands of different designs, like, do you have any best practices when your book of products is that big?
Yeah, so that's where we could probably do an entirely different webinar on just how to handle large inventories. What I would say is to start with using that 80-20 rule as your guide. Sometimes if I'm just starting out, I'll kind of let all products run, sort of see what starts to get traction and perform, sort of not only in Google's eyes, but the consumer's eyes. And then I start building a structure around that. You could start to segment things a bit more, again, with like bestsellers. You could also break it down if there's certain seasonal headbands, or maybe there's some that are meant for more like leisure versus some that are meant for more athletic wear. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It can be a challenge to manage all those products. But I try to find a structure that's going to make that slightly easier.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. That was some amazing information. And just as a reminder, again, this was recorded. We're sorry for some of the lagging sound bites today, but this was recorded. You'll get the slide deck and the recording in your inbox so that you can review on anything you may have missed. So we hope to see everyone back on another WordStream live webinar next month. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.